Well, I think small group, put the questions in the chat, you know, the drill. I have a couple of quick updates, mostly from general media, but there are a couple articles as well. So first is the hospitalization are on the rise, but they're changing dramatically. So there's a lot more people over 65 who are being admitted to the hospitals now compared to how it used to be, where it was more mixed. So that makes it important, so I think, to get the boosters now. I've now heard from several people that they had absolutely no problems getting boosters. They're all available. We're particularly talking about the new boosters, right? So we're not discussing the outdated boosters. If you've had a booster a couple of months ago, it's okay. I probably wouldn't get one now, but if you have not, then do get the newest ones. So that's kind of quick news number one. News number two, and if anybody's interested, I can put the links to the media in the chat, but you know, it's kind of the second. So the second news is now there's 18 million Americans living with long COVID. It's very interesting because that's an official numbers. They're not hidden. They're just everywhere there in the public. 18 million Americans, that's a very massive amount of people. And there is no political movement on figuring out how to support these patients. So it's not just frustrating to me, it appears to be a kind of gross neglect. And I can't quite explain it. The research money that's going into this are irrelevant, right? Because the research money do not answer the immediate concerns. They don't assist people with the needs at the moment. So one thing that I'm observing is a pretty quick uptick in disability claims related to the COVID. I'm assuming that the basic idea of the system goes something like this. Well, this patient is not any different than anybody else, so why should they get the preferred treatment? You know, I don't know if they should. But the reality is this is a new disease, a new situation. So whether or not government decides to do a different new management of such a mass amount of patients, it's going to be up to them. Meantime, I think pretty much every patient is on their own. So all I can say about that. The third news, I think, is not necessarily something you already don't know. So we talked about that a lot in the past, how any chronic or any acute viral infection can end up with a chronic component, right? So yesterday, 2 days ago, I think 2 days ago, the Lancet published a pretty interesting study. That one, I'm going to try to review it on YouTube, kind of go into detail. I don't want to go into detail on a study now just because I haven't evaluated it, frankly, deep enough to do that yet. So I'll record the video and then I can share the video next Friday or Friday after. Basically saying that, look, turns out that the kind of what we call long COVID has been in place for pretty much most of the significant viral infections, whether it's long mono, whether it's long flu, influenza virus. So the phenomenon is not new. We knew this, but it's actually a lot more prevalent than people thought. So when the Lancet did this analysis, turns out that basically percent of people from all these infections that is turned into something relatively chronic is not small. So it's upwards of 5 to 10%, depending on how you look at the data. Now, what's interesting is with COVID, those symptoms seems to be more severe and a little different. The mono symptoms are almost exclusively kind of chronic fatigue syndrome, which we often call just CFS, which stands for chronic fatigue syndrome. And, you know, there's been a discussion for many years whether most of the cases of chronic fatigue syndrome are some kind of a post-viral process. You know, and so I am worried in a way that long COVID over the next few years will be bulk into the CFS kind of variant or CFS group of conditions. And if that happens, we know what that will lead to. It will basically lead to a kind of disregard, like complete, basically like, okay, go to your primary care and figure out what to do. The problem is that most of the primary care doctors are absolutely unable to treat this condition. They're not trained. they don't have time, they don't know what to do with this. They're going to keep referring patients to particular specialists trying to assess some specific near or around chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms, but that's not going to help anybody because the treatment has to be very different. The only thing that tends to routinely help patients with this condition is really kind of general long-term support across all domains of health. And more importantly, that support has nothing to do with medicine. I mean, patients are trying to get this care through the medical pathways, but it's not really easy because medicine doesn't really know what to do about this. So successful stories are usually lay around not in the medical domain. Sometimes they are, but most of the time it's somebody finding a good personal trainer or a good nutritionist or a good acupuncturist, so they're much more in a general domain of you're on your own, good luck finding your own healing path. And I don't necessarily complain here. I'm just saying that we're going to see this en masse expansion of this syndrome, this chronic fatigue syndrome in the upcoming years. We're already seeing it. And the patients are not going to find solutions within the established healthcare system, unfortunately, most of the time. So I'm raising this more as a concern, and I think the evidence supporting what I'm saying, and also more as be aware of this. And if you develop any of those, if you develop this, then you should really look for the team that will support you and don't be afraid of going outside of the system. So that's basically the general message here. Okay, let me look at the chat, see what's going on. And Venya is very actively participating in the process. I see he's gotten very active. For the last couple hours, he was just sitting there, and now he's all running around. He's very excited to see all of it. Okay, so some medical offices are already reporting flu cases. Really? B, is this data from you hearing from someone, or because I have not heard that yet?
Yeah, a couple of doctors.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then definitely start getting flu shots sooner than I expected. I don't know. I have not seen this, and we have not been told that the flu is here. So maybe it is early here. I will get that prepared for next week because I didn't expect it. I didn't look this up, so I don't know what to say. I'll have to research this. Thanks for always try to bring this up. Okay. Yeah, my friend again is Venya. We're visiting our friends, and that's their kid pet. Apparently, he's very friendly and very interested in everything I do. And he's kind of very nice to touch, except that on top is very there's spikes, so you have to be careful. Okay, for a friend, what is the interval between COVID and onset of long? Okay, good question. And how can she distinguish between long COVID or RSV? Okay, so the second, I'm not sure what the question is. The long COVID is a chronic condition, right? When you say RSV is an acute condition. You're asking, can you distinguish between long COVID and long RSV, which is exactly what I was just talking about, right? That any virus can cause chronic. That's probably difficult to some degree, although we do think that long COVID seems to have a specific, it seems to affect a lot more autonomic nervous system. So people tend to develop instability in autonomic nervous system. Sometimes we call it POTS. Sometimes we're just going to call it orthostasis or orthostatic hypertension. So low blood pressure when you move around. So that's easier to answer. Now, for the onset of long COVID, I think the formal definition is persistence of symptoms for 3 months or more. And what's really interesting that we're seeing a lot of the times, then the symptoms don't start right away. So patient will completely recover within, let's say, 2 weeks. And then they will be completely fine for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And suddenly they start getting worse. And quite often when that happens, patient gets misdiagnosed. I've seen this now about a half a dozen times. And it's kind of bizarre because the patient would ask, well, is this long COVID? And the doctor say, nope, because you didn't have consistent symptoms. That is not an absolute requirement. So patient may recover, a couple of weeks later, start having symptoms, and that is all long COVID too. It's just the way that body gradually shifts because the damage to nervous system can occur over a period of time. It can start subtly and progress. And so when it first starts at the very subtle level, you're not going to feel anything. You're not going to feel any symptoms for a while. I have to watch it so I don't kill him by pressing him. Oh, okay, it's going down. Okay. Maybe one or two more questions before we ask to Luci. Anybody have? Well, let me phrase the question again to everybody. Who is courageous enough to talk about their vaccination experience from the last couple of weeks? Yeah, Anne. Just unmute yourself.
I did. I got the vaccine a week ago, and I did your protocol very carefully, and which I've done before, and it helped a lot before.
Mhm.
This time, it didn't work enough. I got really very, very intense itching for a couple days. It was pretty bad. So maybe your protocol would have, without your protocol, it might have been worse. I don't know, but I was not expecting a reaction since your protocol worked very well the last 2 times.
Do you mind telling us what you got specifically, which vaccine?
I got Pfizer at Walgreens on New Mexico Avenue in DC.
The COVID, right? Not the RSV. And you
Yeah.
only got COVID, right? You didn't get flu or RSV at the same time.
Oh no, I would never do that. You said not to do that, and I listened to you.
Okay, no, but I just want to get a full story. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, well, the protocol is obviously not foolproof. I mean, we know that the vaccine, unfortunately, tend to cause a lot of histaminergic release and sort of this autoimmunity. I mean, if you get another booster in the future, my suggestion, talk to me before that. We'll have to get even more aggressive protocol at some point.
Okay.
So everybody, I think what the point here is the itching is not very uncommon. In fact, it's very common. And the itching occurs because the booster tends to stimulate histaminergic response. So histamine is a molecule that gets released by the mast cells, which are the immune modulating cells. And the histamine is one of the way that the immune system tells to the body that there is a inflammatory response. So that there's not, well, chicken and an egg here. It tells the system that there's a problem, and it's one of the mediators of inflammation. And unfortunately, when that happens in excess, there could be this continuous inflammatory response locally. Doesn't have to be at the site of a shot. And was it at the end of it was everywhere, right? Yeah.
All over. It
all
was
over, right. So the reason that happens is because the shot is in one place, but the body thinks that the threat is systemic. And so the histamine gets released everywhere. And then the possibility here why you got all of this and it didn't resolve with the treatment is it may have not just been enough. And that you probably would have been worse if you were taking nothing. So thank you so much for sharing this. Just want to point that out. Okay. There is no link to protocol. People who need to get it, they need to email us because I am ordering it individually. Otherwise, you're going to have to buy it at full price. So that's how we do it. But the protocol, the main part of the protocol for decreasing of autoimmunity is this product called DHIST, or natural by orthomolecular. And you take 2 to 3 capsules before each meal. It's a product that contains quercetin, stinging nettle, N-acetylcysteine, bromelain, something else that I'm missing right now. Vitamin C. So it's basically a regulator of histaminergic response. It tends to help to break down histamine faster and mitigates some of the histaminergic overflow. So, all right, this guy is wandering on the floor. I think I got to pick him up. I'm not sure what he's allowed to do. So let's see. Stella is saying, I got a Pfizer Last Friday, just minor soreness. Okay, that's good. And fatigue. So that's an expected response. Monica's saying, okay. 2 hours ago. Okay, Monica, it's too early to say anything. So I presume that everybody's saying that they have no problems getting the shots, that they are, sorry about that. I don't want them to run away. So I presume nobody's having problems logistically, right? That I have not heard any issues, neither. And I know somebody else from the group emailed me saying that everything went fine. No lines and no side effects. And so it sounds like, as expected, some people who have a little bit more of a hyper reaction in the past, you need to be more careful. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's, let me end here unless somebody has something last minute really burning. And no, I don't think vaccine cards are used anymore, I believe. Maybe they are. I don't know. It's good that Benita put the question is. I don't know if anybody has seen them. Oh, I see Cecilia's raising hand.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm just now realizing what the protocol is. Is this something I can go buy somewhere myself, or you have to prescribe it? I'm confused.
No, you can go buy it, but you need to know what to get.
So that's
you
it.
can't just walk into the store and buy it. You have to. You're not going to be able to find it right away like this.
Okay, because my shot is tomorrow, and I'm getting Moderna.
Yeah, that's too late.
Okay. Well, I haven't had any problems with any of these.
Okay, so just yeah. So if you have any problems, hopefully it'll be fine. It's the prep is optional, obviously. Okay.
Do you take the DHIS the day of vaccination or keep on taking it after that?
No, before you start day before, you take day off, and then you finish the day after. 3 days.
Say that again, please.
3 days.
3
You
days.
start the day before, you get it, you take it during the day, and then you take it also the day after. So it's totally 3 days.
All right, thank you.
And then there's also homeopathic part, and that I will post once Luci starts. I will copy paste that into the chat. That you guys can all get, because the DHIS probably you're not going to be able to walk into Whole Foods and buy, but the rest you should be able to. The homeopathics you should be able, because they're very standard. They're actually moderate potency, maybe a little bit difficult to find, but I'll put that anyway. So
Okay, waiting for that.
okay, well, thank you, Luci, so much for coming. Wonderful to have you back. I'm going to remove my spotlight and pass it on to you, and thank you.
My pleasure. Hello, everyone. If I need to speak louder, just let me know. But I have a headset in, so I don't think I have to speak very loudly. Okay, great. So I am one of the nutrition professors at the GW School of Medicine Integrative Medicine Program. And Lee does a great job keeping you up on nutrition. So I like to come in and add some things from my other areas of expertise, my background in leadership. And I put the two together for when I consult in leadership. It's not just nutrition, but I also, as Janet nicely read off, exercise physiology and overall health. So surprise, surprise, I'm going to talk a little about going into the holidays. And you'll find that what I'm going to talk about today is not too early. It's never too early to start practicing this. So who gets stressed over the holidays? Just curious. Stressed? Not too much. Okay. Who feels like they're pretty good at taking moments of stress, calming down, and choosing the ideal reaction? Thanks, Janet. I got that. Okay. I got one hand up. Oh, 2 hands up. Taking 3. Okay, good. So what we're talking about is choosing a reaction that comes from your highest self. And would you like to have some tools or some more tools for doing this well? Well, I have some for you today, whether or not you want them. So we're going to go ahead and talk about these tools because there are a number of them. And the better you get at calming yourself and reacting in the best way possible during a stressful situation, it could be any time, of course, the better you get at turning stressful events into neutral events or even positive events. And we can even get better at finding the gift or the opportunity in situations that seems like things aren't going our way. So the info I'm sharing today is coming from the past 2 months where I've worked with the founder of Positive Intelligence, Shirzad Chamine. He's a Stanford University researcher and lecturer and author of the book Positive Intelligence. I don't know if any of you have heard of that yet, but it's a wonderful read, and he breaks it down really well into how this works in the brain. So I worked with him for the last 2 months on being able to train people with this. And as you know, here in the grad program of integrative medicine, we teach students to look at the whole person when making diagnoses and recommendations. We want our students to look into the surrounding environments and the whole body and mind, not just one health issue. And as an integrative leadership trainer, I work with people to bring their whole self, especially their higher self, to their leadership roles. And I support them in creating habits that optimize performance, which must include habits that optimize health, because optimal performance of mind and body go hand in hand. So now let's talk about how that relates to surviving holiday stress or any stress. I'm sure you have some ideas already. But to dive right in, according to Positive Intelligence, all negative thoughts are useful for 1 to 3 seconds. They're useful to give you the warning that they're meant to give, like someone is dangerous, or you're stepping into danger, or you're going to hurt yourself. But keeping these thoughts in your head is like keeping your hand on a hot stove. You know why holding your hand on a hot stove is bad for you. Well, continuing to think negatively and ruminate about negative things prolongs and increases stress. And you're probably familiar with how stress is bad for mental and physical health. And that's been borne out in research in many different ways. But what we need to do with negative thoughts is get the message they're sending, because that's important. It's a warning sign, and then get into a different mental state to decide what to do about the situation and then take action. Because what we want to do is make decisions and take action from a higher level of thinking. So I'm going to be calling this our higher self. Now, through MRI studies, Shirzad's research shows that stress and fear thoughts activate different parts of the brain than our higher self thoughts. And these two areas don't activate at the same time. They're kind of like a teeter-totter. And what I'm referring to as higher self thoughts include things like empathy, kindness, creativity, curiosity, intuition, following your sense of purpose, and having a clear, focused attention. So all these are things we want to have all the time, right? But we notice we don't have them all the time. And what's nice about what I'm talking about is we can actually practice being able to purposefully get into this zone of thinking. So when it comes to stress, we want to shift out of those negative thoughts, which are also stress thoughts, so we can think more holistically and be more empathetic and kind to people and come up with novel solutions to problems, ask meaningful questions, pay closer attention to things that make a difference, make decisions based on our higher self, and have ideas that change the world. And when we practice to train our brain to tune into these higher self thoughts, we can do it more quickly when we need it most. So I'm going to give you 4 tools today to use for that practice. And these tools are meant to be used anywhere in any situation. I think you're going to like this because it goes right along with a meditation practice, but it's slightly different from meditation. So if you meditate already, you'll notice the similarities. And if you don't meditate already, this will be pretty easy. So we're going to do the mindfulness practice along with the wellness talk today. And before we get started, though, I just want to say, if you were triggered by something and you do these exercises, you'll notice that you can start to feel calmer faster. Your fight, flight, freeze response will start fading away, and your higher level thinking brain will start coming online. Therefore, you'll be able to pick the responses you want to have in the situation instead of being stuck with one that's automatic. That's most likely, oftentimes, not the ideal response. And another great thing about this is that it's one of the ways we can increase mental fitness. So let's do the practice first, and then I'll explain more about it. Okay. So let's get into a comfortable position. Usually seated is good, right? And remember I said you can do these anywhere. But first I'm going to start with the closed eyes practice, and we'll work with open eyes too. So whenever you're ready, let's close eyes and take a few purposeful deep breaths. Inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. And we found that sighing, you don't have to make a sound, but sighing tends to be the most relaxing. So long out breath. And as we go through here, I'm going to give you the 4 practices. The first one is wiggle your fingers and toes. Just find all your fingers and toes. Move around a little bit. Just kind of noticing that they're there. You don't have to do it for a long time, just a little bit. And then go back to being relaxed, releasing any muscles that might be tight or holding. A couple more breaths. And we'll move into the second practice, which is putting the hands together. Placing the palms of the hands together, the fingers of the hands together. Continue breathing and relaxing. And just feel the skin on the hands, the places that the hands are touching each other, maybe the heat of the hands, a little pressure. And continue to breathe and relax. Your mind might wander off while you're doing these exercises. It's normal. Just bring it back to being present with your body. A few more moments on the hands. Continue relaxing and feeling the hands. And then release the hands. Keep your eyes closed for this next one. Now we're just going to listen to the sounds around you. Hear the sounds of the room. You might even hear your breath. Just globally pay attention to those sounds. Now, pay attention to the furthest sound you can hear. And now the closest sound. Stay with us. And now the fourth exercise. For this one, you can open your eyes and just pick something very close to you that you want to look at for a moment. Look, it could be anything at all, but just something that might be a little interesting to you. And look at the colors. Look at the variety of colors, the shades, the lightness and darkness. Really get interested in what these colors are like. Maybe you see some texture, patterns. Feel your body relaxing as you do this exercise. Stay with it for just a few more moments. What else are you noticing? Breathe. Okay, now that our eyes are open, we can just come back to listening. Does anyone feel more relaxed? Any thoughts or comments for that? I know it takes a couple seconds to get things in the chat, so I'll keep talking. It takes just a couple minutes. It can take as little as 1 minute if that's all you have. And you can take as long as you need to get as calm as you need. But essentially, there are 4 different exercises you can do, and you can do all of them, or a couple of them, or one of them. And you might have noticed that what this is getting into our bodies and out of our mind. So this is somatic work. And that is part of the different areas of the brain that I was talking about when we're ruminating, going over and over something, trying to figure out a difficult problem. A lot of times what happens is we get a little too stressed or a little too intense. We have to pull back. And a great way to pull back is to get into the body. And we talked about fingers and toes, placing hands together, listening, or looking. And we started with a few breaths to get grounded. And throughout the entire time, we're just releasing the body. After you complete the exercise, you'll be in a different mental state, and the answers you're looking for might come to you immediately. Oftentimes they do pop up into your head, or you can ask, what would my higher self do in this situation? You will absolutely be able to think of something better than your initial fight, flight, freeze response would have been. And if you don't come up with the ideal response, you just need a little more time. So, for example, if it's a really difficult conundrum, give it a little break, do something else, distract yourself, come back to doing the exercise again, and then ask again, what would my higher self do in this situation? The more we practice, the better we get at it. So this helps with three things. Calms you, brings all the health effects of reducing stress, allows you to purposefully put the brain into a state where you have more creative, useful, even brilliant answers to choose from. And it creates mental fitness, like I was saying. And this is literally training the brain to react differently to stressful events. It builds different nerve pathways in the brain. So I'm going to show you just a little picture to help you to see what I'm talking about. I'm sure you might have seen some of this before. This is a very simplified picture of, for example, the nerves in your brain. And on the top, we have the event that happens that activates certain neurons in your brain. And this little orange circle is the connection between one group of neurons and the next group of neurons, which is what you do after the event, right? So we have the event and we have the action after the event. And Shirzad, that's him up here in the upper right, he calls that the saboteurs. Those are the ruminations in our mind that tell us bad things are going to happen. And it could be one of many different ways that we do that to ourselves. And you might have heard of the term nerves that fire together, wire together. And that is a physiological circumstance that we have witnessed regularly, that the more we think down certain ways, it works with the body and it works with the brain. So the more we think, after this trigger, we have this response. After this trigger, we have this response. The easier it becomes, the more of a habit it is, the more natural it is. But we can train to go a different direction. And you can see here, Shirzad calls it a PQ rep. I won't go into that, but that's what we did. We did a PQ rep, that we did a couple of repetitions of relaxation to shift the brain. It's a break in between that trigger and that response. And that's the only way we can shift to a different reaction. So we're training the brain in two ways. One is break, taking the break during the stressful period and just stopping to do that. So that's literally one habit that we're training. And then we can train the next habit and the next level by choosing a different pathway. So you see this, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but the sage pathway going down and to the right, that's a different direction. That's our higher self. And if we choose the other pathway enough times, we actually wire those neurons together stronger. And by not choosing the first pathway that we've been doing for a while, that actually gets weaker. And we see that in fMRI studies. So yes, we can change our brains. It's called neuroplasticity. And we've known this for a long time, but this is an even more advanced way that we're understanding it now. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples of how I've used it in the recent past. Just a couple so you can understand kind of how you might use it. While I was taking this course with Shirzad, we were really focused on recognizing our negative thoughts. And the more you focus on something, the more you see it, right? Probably recognize that yourself. So we're paying attention to these thoughts and we're working on shifting them, pausing and shifting. And they happen a lot, throughout the day. If you start to look at them, you might see a lot more also that you have noticed in the past. So I was having a conversation with my husband and I started to get angry and I realized, oh, this is a reaction I don't want to have. I want to purposely shift this. So instead of having my natural response, which might have been anger, we might have had a heated discussion, I walked into the bathroom for a moment and I looked at our shower curtain, and our shower curtain has blue trees on it. And I just took a few breaths and I looked at the trees and I was noticing the details of the stitching in the shower curtain. It must have been maybe a minute and a half. Calmed down. Boom. What comes up in my mind is, how do I say this in a better way? How do I say this so we have a discussion and not an argument? And that shifted everything. It changed. So that's one way of how this works. Another way, second story, is it's a little bit of a backstory. So you get to understand how the mind and body work together and how we train ourselves. When I was writing Eat to Lead, the book back there, if you've seen me before, I wrote the book Eat to Lead. It's about nutrition and how nutrition affects how we can be optimal in our work as leaders. So I was writing the book and I was sitting at my desk, and I'm very, very good at figuring out all the ways that things can go wrong so that I can prevent them, right? So a lot of our fear thoughts, negative thoughts come from protection, and wanting to protect ourselves and preserve ourselves. So I was sitting at the desk and writing and thinking of all the possible ways this could go wrong once it was published. And what started to happen was I was developing those thoughts, creating those neuronal connections so well that I started to sweat when I was writing. I started to get anxiety, basically, as I was writing this book. I developed my own anxiety. And I got so good at it, that neuronal connection in my brain got so good, releasing chemicals into my body, and creating that anxiety response, that then I went out into the world. So my book was published right before COVID. And then we had the whole COVID situation. And when I started going out into the world again, I'd have the teeniest little negative thought and boom, I would start sweating. I would get hot and sweat. Just the teeniest little thing. I wasn't even, it wasn't even necessarily anything serious that I was fearing, but that was how well I trained my mind-body connection for anxiety. So long story short, coming to this point in time, the work that I've done with Shirzad on these exact exercises have helped me to drastically reduce that response and shift it. And I'm pretty much back to normal now. So these are ways it can work. All right, so this is beneficial for everyone, as you can see. And the more people in the world that we have doing this, the better off we all will be. Over the holidays, we want to create happy memories and great bonds. And this can be a really useful tool to stay centered and have a more calm, peaceful, joyous holiday. And as you can see, though, practice makes it work. And so when we start practicing things like this early, before a big event, or, if we start practicing something like this now, by the time we get into the holidays, it's there for us when we need it. So I am pretty much finished with my little presentation today. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Also, you can email me, luci@lucigabel.com. And Positive Intelligence is the name of the book, and that's at positiveintelligence.com if you want to get more from Shirzad. All right.
So if Misha could come back.
Yep.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Lucy.
Janet.
Appreciate you as always.
Same with you guys.
I'm answering some of the questions from the chat. Maybe anybody else have a question? I think Salome has a question. Unmute yourself first.
I do. It might be a bit involved. I'm going to have my COVID vaccine on Tuesday. I have already ordered the yeast. Am I supposed to take a few capsules before?
Yes. Start the day before. Take 2 capsules the day before 3 times a day.
Okay.
Then
And
take another 2 capsules 3 times a day the day off, and then another 2 capsules 3 times a day the following day. So total of 6 capsules per day for 3 days.
okay, thank you. And then I ran out of Arnica 200 CK and I forgot to order it.
That's okay. Just get 30C. I think somebody else just asked the same question. So if you have 30C, use that.
Oh, 30C.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
If you email me the how to do the yeast, I really would appreciate it. I didn't write it very well. Or if, yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I see a question from me, Misha. Should I answer? Or are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay. How do you listen to the news to stay informed without getting overly upset? Yeah. After a stressful event, that's a great question because you can do these exercises in several different times. I was mentioning how you can do it before a stressful event. You can also do it during. So you can pick one that is comfortable, you're comfortable doing right during the time. Hands together, fingers and toes, listening. So you can do it during the news or after the news. For example, after a stressful event and you need to calm yourself down, bring yourself back to a more balanced state. So sometimes we have an event that sets us off for quite some time, or this very strong, and it takes a little work to bring us back into our higher level thinking, mental state and balance. So thanks for that question.
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll see everybody next Friday.
Okay.
Enjoy the weekend. It sounds like it's gonna be rainy and cloudy and still enjoyable.
Can you repeat the DEIS protocol, please?
Yes.
2 capsules 3 times a day. Okay, I'm gonna type it up. 2 capsules 3 times per day. Start 24 hours before the vaccine and take for 3 days. Take each dose before meals.
And this is into addition to your protocol while at the pharmacy.
Correct. DHIST you will not find in a regular store. Not possible. They
I
don't.
haven't managed to find Cilicia and Fuja yet either. Do you know where to get those locally?
No, I do not.
Okay,
That's
thanks.
why I recommend everybody to order it through our system and send me a message so I can also give you a full wholesale discount, because otherwise you'll be paying a full price. We'll see every next week. Next week guest will be Chevron Larice. Thank you, Janet, for putting it in. Owner of Restore Tranquility and a certified yoga therapist through Breathing Deeply Yoga Therapy School and certified cannabis-assisted psychedelic therapist through the Center of Medicinal Mindfulness. I'm personally very excited. I've met Chevron a couple of weeks ago and think very highly of her. I hope everybody comes. This is going to be a pretty different experience for everybody. So be there. Is that what you say? Or be square? Is that, am I saying this right?
You are.
culturally
Luci,
appropriate.
Lucy?
Yes.
Lucy, is it, these tools are simple enough. It sounds like it might be good to teach children who get anxious. to do these things.
Absolutely. They have been starting to teach, I believe it's kindergarten and up with these. It is very exciting. Yeah. I did have one more small, really interesting point, and that is that they've seen the changes in the brain, the literal structural changes in the brain after doing these exercises for about 6 weeks, about 15 minutes a day. But it's not sitting like meditation for 15 minutes. It's more of like on and off, exactly what we're talking about during different times, interrupting yourself when you're having thoughts or patterns that you want to change.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Nice to see you all.
Curiosity question. What kind of animal did you have, Dr. Kogan? It's what? Lizard?
I have no idea who he is. It's some kind of lizard. Yeah, it's my friend's kid's pet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Apparently, he's very friendly and very entertaining, and always gets on people. He likes the warmth, you know. He's a cold-blooded creature. So,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.